It is an incredible honor today to have Anthony Flynn on the podcast. Anthony is a highly sought-after advisor to CEOs, key executives, and their companies. His extensive experience includes leadership roles with numerous Fortune 100 giants like Kraft Foods, RJ Reynolds, and 3M, as well as pivotal executive positions in several multimillion-dollar nonprofit ventures. As a respected authority in his field, Anthony has been a featured speaker at institutions and events, including Harvard University, Emory University, Georgia Tech, and the University of Memphis. His insights have been broadcast on platforms including the Wall Street Journal syndicated radio show Biz 1190, TEDx, and the Q Conference. Anthony, I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for being on the show.
Man, William, it's such an honor. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you. I appreciate the platform you have shared and extended to your audience and beyond. And it's such a delight and honor to join you here today.
I'm looking forward to a fantastic conversation.
So am I.
Let's jump in.
Welcome to Catalytic Leadership, the podcast designed to help leaders intentionally grow and thrive. Here is your host, author, and leadership and executive coach, Dr. William Attaway.
Here's where I'd like to start. I would love for you to share some of your story with our listeners, particularly around your journey and your development as a leader. How'd you get started?
Yeah, so, I don't know how many, people you've had on, but they may not go back as far as I am on this. And that I'm going to go all the way back to the very beginning of my childhood. And it's relevant because my mother was a teenage mother. So she was 16 years old when she got pregnant with me. She actually had me the summer before her senior year of high school. And that's relevant because we essentially had to navigate life on our own. We had not much support. She was a single mom. She and my biological father, who did graduate high school together, but I was with them their entire senior year. They eventually moved in together, but that relationship did not work out. And so my mom and I were left to essentially fend for ourselves. Eventually, she met a man many years later that eventually became my stepfather. But I learned a lot, William, in hindsight at an early age in terms of having to become more independent, how to navigate life, understanding that, life can punch you in the mouth and there are times you've just got to get back up and fight. And so frankly, the leadership in me, I like to tell people that the CEO in me was birthed in those early years because I had to become the CEO of me. I had to become the CEO of my own life and really understand that if things were going to happen in life, I had to get up myself and actually fight for the things that I wanted in my life. Now I'll pause because you had a moment there. So let me not keep rambling. Did you have something you wanted to throw in?
No, that's really good. I think that type of ownership and that type of intentionality is one of the things that I hear most often among successful people. And I want to call that out so our listeners hear that. I chose to be the CEO of my life.
Yes.
You get to choose. I want to call that out. I love that.
Yeah. And you bring up a great point, William, because oddly enough, just before the recording of this podcast, I was speaking to a leader who has gone through a lot of trauma and military background, gone through a lot of trauma and still struggles with taking ownership of their life. The trauma has overwhelmed them so much that it's been a challenge and a struggle to rebalance and to regain traction. And so I was literally just having this conversation about being the CEO of your life and that you have the power and the authority within you to actually push yourself forward or pull yourself forward, however you want to look at it. Granted, you need to lean on and rely on other resources around you. So I'm not the person who just assumes that you can make it all by yourself. In fact, quite the complete contrary. So many
100%
came into my life, William, in my early years, my primary years, my high school years, my early career, who made such an impact in my life, who helped breathe life into me, who helped show me the ropes and show me things I never would have learned outside of being in a context with people who had favorable knowledge and wisdom in those areas. And so I do highly encourage that those who are listening, that as you think about this concept of becoming the CEO of your life, look at ways you can lean on resources and people around you, but understand that the ownership of that comes from within. It starts with you.
That's so good. As you say that, I'm thinking about, when I was 15 years old, I had a teacher in high school invite me to attend my first leadership conference. I'd never, ever really thought about leadership as a discipline or a field of study or anything. But he saw something in me I didn't see in myself.
Yeah.
And here, some 40 years later, I'm still a student of leadership and now helping others. And it's so exactly what you're saying. The people around us have such an incredible impact. I love that you brought that out too.
Yeah. So I'll share that my first encounter I had at least my first realization of an encounter with leadership. I was actually in 5th grade, and it was my 5th grade teacher. Her name was Angela Atkins. And I went to elementary school in Memphis, Tennessee, in the inner city, in a very rough community called the Orange Mound community. And so actually, William, speaking of my background, my leadership moment came out of something negative. I got into a fight with one of my good friends in my classroom. Actually, Kendrick is no longer with us, unfortunately, due to a drug deal gone bad. So I really do come from some rough terrain and a challenging background. But Kendrick and I got into a little fight, and Angela Atkins, Miss Atkins is what we affectionately called her, obviously, at that time. She came into the room, and the class was loud and kids were yelling, and she was down the hall, and she pulled me aside. This was game-changing for me. She pulled me aside and she said, "Anthony, I was actually going to allow you to go on the trip to Huntsville, Alabama to visit the Space Center. However, I'm only willing to take classroom leaders with me on that trip." And that was the first time in my life so I had the grades, right? I was a straight A student, but my conduct, frankly, admittedly to your audience, was terrible because of all the emotional challenges and trauma. But William, that was the first time in my life that I understood the importance of how behavior and performance can influence the climate of success or the lack thereof. And that was when the framing of leadership really became a thing for me. It's like, if I stand out as a leader and if I handle my business, I get rewarded. I get compensated for that behavior. And so on a dime, man, everything shifted for me. And by the way, I went on that trip as a 5th grader. She took myself and one other kid in the classroom. And so we were the 2 students. So she had her eye on me. And up to that point, no teacher had ever really chosen to wrap their arms around me metaphorically, right? And say, you know what? I see potential in this kid. Even though he has a challenged background, even though his conduct isn't great, I'm going to call him forward. I'm going to call the leadership forward out of him. Angela Atkins was the first person to deliver that for me.
My goodness. And now what we get to do is to see the potential in other people.
Absolutely.
And we get to call that out, and we get to work with them to see what they can't see, because you can't see the whole picture when you're in the frame.
I love it. Absolutely.
So how do you get from the Huntsville Space and Rocket Center to now working with Fortune 100 companies?
Yep. So again, in that moment, as crazy as it may sound to people, it does connect, in that, again, I saw, frankly, that, we live in America, right, William? So capitalism, the construct of capitalism, free enterprise. And so I saw in that moment that how I performed, how I behaved, et cetera, influenced the trajectory of my life. I didn't have put it into words at that time.
Good.
But I was able to see that, okay, Anthony, if you man up and if you handle your business, you get rewarded for that. If you don't, you get penalized, you get punished for that. And in the system that I was in, right, in that case, the school system, right, the structure of that school and the structure of that system rewarded me or punished me based on that behavior. So I began to govern my life, William, with that in mind, that, okay, going forward, Anthony, if you do the right things the right way and you do it at the highest level, society, culture, and people around you will honor that and reward you in return. If you don't bring your A game, if you don't perform at the highest level, guess what? You can get rewarded, but the reward doesn't come at the same magnitude that it does when you really honor your craft, honor your gift, honor who you are, and bring the best of you to the game every day. And so that is how it evolved into high school, middle school to high school, where, graduated, one of the top students in my class, and, act on the football field. I ended up signing a full scholarship. And so you name it, but that really became the governing tool of my life, that I was competing with me and not with everyone around me, and that I had to every day make me better, that I had to move the finish line for myself and continue to really climb new heights for myself. And of course, William, out of that, what really led to me developing other leaders was I started to get, Angela Atkins was the first educator to call on me, but fast forward to my high school, my junior year, where my head football coach called me in and said, Anthony, we've got some guys on the team that are not doing well, drug usage and a number of other things. We want you to talk to the football team. And I'm going, man, I'm one of the guys. I'm who they are, right? But that the coaches, because of my character, because of how I carried myself, because of my performance in the classroom, my effort on the football field, they saw the leadership in me, and they asked me to then, in fact, influence others around me. And so, William, it became organic that I was that guy, from middle school to high school to college, and my internships and blah, 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 blah. And so fast forward, I became officially a CEO, if you will, technically executive director. I started a community development corporation. We planted a church in Memphis, Tennessee, which is where I'm from. We planted a church in the neighborhood, in the hood, if you will, that I grew up in, that my mom still lives in, by the way. And that church we started with 60 people, 60 volunteers, myself and the lead pastor, and we grew that church to over 10,000 members in 4 years. And that is not an exaggeration. We moved 5 times in 4 years because of explosive growth. And we were on Outreach Magazine's fastest growing churches, top 20, 3 years in a row. I mean, it was crazy, the growth, right? So out of that was really when the entrepreneur in me was awakened in a way that I never realized. And so at the age of 5, I started our community development corporation and began to blend my passion for ministry and faith with the context of community engagement and business development, And so it was in the church, actually, for me, William, that I started to develop leaders and realize that I had the influence, if you will, to really pour into people and develop people. And then that community development corporation became a community-based expression of that. By the way, that what started as an idea now has 5 charter schools, an entrepreneurial institute, a public apartment community, a health clinic, and a number of other things that really I conceptualized, but my successor came in and really, because I relocated from Memphis to California, and my successor came in and really took what I conceptualized and started with the board and everything, and really took that thing to the next level, and is flourishing to this day. So 20 years later, in fact, they're having, oddly enough, literally the 20-year celebration is next week.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, literally as we record is next week from this recording. So yeah, 20 years. So that I saw the opportunity to pour into people and to develop people, and that I, as a leader, could have influence in the lives of other people, William, who didn't have access to the same resources and, both human capital, financial capital, whatever you want to call it, in that community is where it began for me.
I often teach that there is no such thing as a wasted experience in your life, right? That even the highest highs and the lowest lows have contributed to make you and I who we are. And we would not be the same person without them. And that we have a choice. You and I, we can choose to be a reservoir of all that experience and all the insight that comes along with it, try to hold it all in just for us, or we can be a conduit of that. And we can share that open-handedly, freely with the people around us for their benefit. As I listen to your story and what you created and how that has impacted and blessed so many other people in so many different areas, that's what I think about. I think about that whole conduit concept. Does that resonate?
Oh, 100%. Look, I hope you don't mind me sharing biblically, but
Please.
my favorite, it's more blessed to give than to receive. And I have literally found that to be true in my life. Hey, I always, tease when I speak, and I'm speaking to high school students to say, hey, how many of you, would love somebody to give you $1,000, right? It's like, of course, speaking at a high school, everybody's, I said, but what if you're in a position where you're able to be the one to give that, meaning you're in such a great position that you're the person writing the check for the $1,000. And guess what? Everything you need is covered, and even many of the things you want. And of course they go, oh my gosh, I'd really love to be that person, right? Knowing that my needs and some of my wants were met. And so really, to that end, I realized that I had a calling on my life and a mandate, if you will, to really share. William, this may sound crazy to some people, but I believe this at the fiber of every element of my being. Being born in poverty and in one of the most gang-infested, crime-infested communities in the country was a gift to me. And you said it. I'm saying what you just said in a different way. In that, think about the life skills that I got and the spirit of long suffering, the resilience, the longitudinal outlook on life. There is so much gifting in the struggle, right? In fact, way more gifting in the struggle, if you will, than in the progress. Don't get me wrong, progress is a gift as well because it keeps your motor going. But I'm saying what I learned in some of the deepest, darkest moments of my life has been the fuel and the ammunition to look at, frankly, some of the problems that people around me, and I say this very respectfully, I go, man, that's nothing.
Right.
Again, I say that respectfully. I don't mean to minimize.
Sure.
I'm not trying to minimize anyone's pain, but I'm simply saying that. So I'm like, for example, work. I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, man, if you knew work is a joy. I love work. I'm like, yes. So somebody missed an appointment or you didn't sign a contract. You're crying over that. Like, go get another one. That's right. That's right. Really? So because of my life's experiences and my trauma, rejection and hearing no and not landing a contract here or not successfully, it's like, bro, like, get over it. That is so compared to what you went through, that's nothing. Oh my gosh, you'll get over that quickly. And that, in my mind, was the gift that my conditions and my circumstances and the trauma that I faced as a child, that was the gift that it gave me.
I love that perspective. And that is, my wife and I were just last night talking about how going through difficult, challenging, traumatic experiences changes the way you look at life, changes the way you look at opportunities and the challenges. And it puts things into a different layer of perspective.
Absolutely.
We had a struggle with our older daughter where she was diagnosed with a very rare form of cancer when she was 14. Let me tell you what, she's doing great. Praise God. She's doing great.
Praise God.
But I'll tell you what, that'll change your perspective.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? It completely shifts the way you look at the difficult things. Somebody didn't sign a contract. You know what? If that's the worst thing that happens all week, that's a pretty good week.
I'm okay. I'm going to be good. Absolutely.
So true. So now you take what you have learned, these insights and this wisdom, and you share this with CEOs, with senior executives, with leaders, so many different places, so many different contexts.
Absolutely.
All around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, my wife and I, again, at the time of this recording, just last week, we were in California with a retired Fortune 200 CEO. And one of the greatest compliments, and we spent the whole week at his place in California, in San Clemente. And one of the greatest compliments that I've ever been paid was having this CEO make the statement that upon his transition to the eternal life, he wants me to have the honor to eulogize him.
Oh my goodness. What a gift.
What a tremendous gift and an honor. So to that end, I spend a lot of time around highly influential, highly powerful people. And so why did I brought that up? Because as we talk about your influence, right? So this is one of the most powerful people in the world. I could never, ever write him a check. I mean, he's way beyond my years, so I will never catch up to him financially, right?
Yeah.
Hey, I may make a lot of money, but I won't catch him because he's way out.
That's right.
He's got some years on me, but I say that to say, but showing up as a leader and looking for ways to add value, in his life, and in the lives of those around him has been a game changer. And so from the position where I sit in terms of the work I do every day, William, that is one of the secret sauces, if you will, that a lot of people will walk into a room full of CEOs and key executives or highly powerful people, and they're intimidated, right, by the concept of it. My approach has always been every single person on earth. Here, everyone, if you're listening, hear what I'm about to say. I've never met a wealthy person that did not have a problem that their money could not solve. Let me say it a different way. Let me say it a different. Every wealthy and powerful person I know has a problem that their money cannot solve.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So if you are equipped, or however you are equipped, right? Each of us are equipped differently. Think about ways as you walk into rooms of powerful people and as you're looking to do the work that you do on a daily basis, think about ways you can add value to people based on your skill set, your background, your experiences in a way that's different from what he or she brings to the table, right? And that's essentially been the baseline of my formula. How can I, with this person that I'm interacting with, how can I add value in a way that up to this point, value hasn't been added the way I can add it to them? That comes in context of business, and I have a whole formulaic process, proprietary framework that I use in context with the CEOs and key executives I coach. I have a business model that I use in context of helping their actual companies. And so we can talk business all day and the 5 primary pillars of business: management, operations, marketing, finance, technology. I can get into we can talk business language all day, but ultimately what we're doing every day is we're adding value to people in a way where value hasn't yet been added. It's not that value hasn't been added, is that you're coming in with a unique perspective and a unique way to add value, maybe in a way that hasn't been added in that context before. And so that's really my baseline. I don't know if that helps.
Oh, 100%. And I think that is to come at it from that angle and to come at it with that open-handed generosity and say, how can I add value here?
Yeah.
I think that's the perspective.
Yeah.
That again, I see among people who are the most successful leaders. It's not about them. It's not about what they're going to get. It's about other people.
Absolutely. And you bring it right. So for example, I tell people I'm unapologetic about offering my services or offering my products because in my mind, I'm not selling, I'm serving.
That's it.
Right.
That's exactly right.
So if you're uncomfortable, odds are you probably are more in sales mode than serve mode. Because if you think about it, if the person that I'm engaging or encountering doesn't need me, William, then I'm going to offer them another solution that may not be a solution I provide. But if I'm genuinely serving that person, I care that they get the resolution to their problem. I don't care if I'm the one who gives it to them.
Yes. Yes.
I hope that I'm the one who can give it to them, right?
Yes.
But if I'm not, because I'm in servant mode and not sales mode, hey, you know what? I'm not the guy to help you, but based on what you shared, I actually know someone else who can. I care more about you succeeding than I do about getting a contract from you.
Yes. Yes. This is leadership. We win when you win.
Yes. Now, William, it's so basic and so fundamental, yet so many people miss it. And I guess that's why you have this podcast.
Well, and my hope is that through stories like yours and insights like what you're sharing here today, that people will hear something that will make them pause, that will make them say, oh, I never thought of it like that. And maybe, just maybe, they take a step toward the best version of themselves.
Again, man, leaning into, so oftentimes, again, people run from their pain points as a point of leadership. My entire leadership manual is based on my pain and trauma. For example, using poverty as the example, it taught me how to go in and appreciate people as people and not look at them as transactions.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So I go in I go in with seeing them as the human being they are first and not seeing them as a checkbook or as a dollar sign, right? Because of how I grew up. And so it allows me to not feel the pressure to pressure them to do a deal, to sign a contract, to write a check. That, hey, obviously as a byproduct, if I offer something that's going to be beneficial to you and or your business, of course, as a byproduct, guess what? They're going to likely pay me for my services, but that is so secondary, if not tertiary, in the dialogue. Again, what's most important is understanding that this is a dignified human being sitting across the table from me. And I want to do everything in my power to equip them and give them what they need to be successful in a way that they haven't been able to be successful before. And if I lead with that spirit and that cognition in mind, William, I've been so blessed up to this point to have referral after referral after referral. I really haven't had to put a ton of extra energy. I put energy into growing my business, but, I'm not panicking every day trying to figure out how I'm going to eat, because people will refer me because they say, you know what, this guy, he cares about me as a human and he cares about me as a leader, and he's not after me for a paycheck or for a dollar sign.
Yes.
A very important principle of leadership for all of us, regardless of what type of role you're in, whether you're in corporate America or nonprofit or education or government, regardless of the case, lead with a heart to serve and be an example of servanthood for others. And in my experience, it will always help promote you faster than you being transactional in your approach toward people.
So well said. Anthony, you have to lead at a higher level today than you did 5 years ago. Your team, your business, your clients, they need you to lead at a higher level. And the same thing is going to be true 5 years from now. How do you continue to level up your game? How do you continue to sharpen your saw so that you will be able to lead at the level that your team, your business, and your clients need in the years to come?
Yeah. Man, that's a tremendous question. And thank you for asking. So once again, I go back to leaning into my adversity. What I learned early on was that because of my story and background, being born to a teenager, and I'm answering your question, by the way, being born in poverty, again, not using it as a crutch, hear me out, Will, but actually using it as fuel and ammunition. I learned early on that, Anthony, you don't get to sleep in when other people do. You don't get to you can take breaks, but if everybody else takes 30 minutes, you get 25, right? You get 20. And that's a metaphor or how I live my life, with an urgency to keep learning, growing, and transforming. So I have found,
great.
It really is. It's like everything that I've accomplished has been accomplished through my willingness to adapt, and transform. Right. So, okay, Anthony, so you want to go to college, but nobody in your family has ever gone to college. Okay. So find people around you that have been to college, adopt some of the things that they share with you and behaviors or habits they have, adopt them, adapt to them, and then let that transform you. And so in my mind, at every stage, William, I'm constantly reaching for transformation. But in order to do that, I got to keep growing, learning, leaning into podcasts, books, et cetera, resources and tools and people that help me move to the next level. And so I get up very practically, everyone listening. I get up every morning between 3 a.m. and 4 o'clock a.m., like clockwork, including this morning, and I do my Bible study first. And then typically I'm going to the gym immediately after, as I did this morning. And I spend the first literally few hours of every day with me, because my approach is this, William. Think about it. My story and background did not equip me to be who I am and do what I do. So the only way I could get here is through the learning again, adapting and transforming. Right. So I literally don't give myself permission to stop adapting and transforming, learning, growing, et cetera. There's a book on me 100% of the time. Obviously not when I'm in the gym, but meaning if I've got my bag, which is right beside me, there's a book right next to me. Right now I'm reading Hidden Talent by Adam Grant, by the way. Great book. Adam's a professor at the Wharton School of Business, and great book. But I'm constantly reading. I listen to podcasts regularly. Of course, I've written a few books myself. I'm constantly researching, et cetera. So it's been the great, among other gifts, right? One more great gift that I think God has given me is the gift of curiosity. Because, so Anthony, how did you make it?
Good.
So many other people from your community didn't? Because I was curious.
That's right.
If I saw it on TV, but didn't see it in my neighborhood, in my apartment community, I'd go, wait, how do they live in a place like that? And there's no places like this around me. What do I need to do to learn where they live and how they got there? And that curiosity has always driven me.
That's so good.
Yeah. I live with that urgency of curiosity every single day. And it's a relentless urgency to keep growing, keep learning, keep stretching so that I never fall behind and respectfully fall back into the trap of poverty and or the trap of the community. And so it's a healthy push. It's not right. Again, I'm not leaning on it as a crutch. I have a healthy perspective on an urgency to grow and learn and to be curious.
Well, I think that drive and that hunger is what separates. It's what separates the most successful people from those who are satisfied with mediocrity.
Yeah.
I firmly believe mediocrity never inspired anyone.
Absolutely.
Excellence honors God and inspires people. Mediocrity does neither. And that's what I hear in your answer there. I hear that drive for excellence, that hunger for excellence. And if it's going to take 3 o'clock in the morning, then it's going to take 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Whatever it takes.
Yeah. And by the way, for the people out there, don't feel pressure to get up at 3 in the morning because I said I do it. More feel the pressure to do what you need to do in order to be successful for you. So in other words, the pressure should be, what is my formula? Anthony has his formula that keeps him driven and keeps an urgency for him. What is my formula that will keep me driven and keep an urgency for me?
That's so good. So as a continual learner, as one who's always reading, is there a book that has made a big difference in your journey that you would recommend to the leaders who are listening?
Yeah, man, I read so many books. So when I can think of so many, but one that just pops out, I don't know why it hit me, is a guy named Todd Rose, and he wrote a book called The End of Average. Todd was a professor at Harvard. He has a very powerful story. Also grew up poor, was on, food stamps and welfare, government assistance, and bottom line, ended up going to college and eventually made his way to Harvard as a professor. The End of Average, the reason I'm recommending it is because what he's suggesting is that, most of the times as leaders, we are comparing ourselves to what the average leader, who the average leader is and who, and it's like, okay, the challenge with average is that average may not be a fit for you. So like, for example, Anthony's context, I can't look at the average leader because I was born to a teenage mother in poverty in Memphis in a gang-infested, crime-infested community. So the resources that are important for me to grow are going to be different from the average person who maybe was born in, say, a suburban community or who had resources in their home, who had a mom and dad who went to college, who comes from a progeny of wealth. So, Anthony, you can't look at their situation and say, you know what? Based on averages, I'm going to become them. No, you're not.
That's right.
Because you have a totally different situation that you need to look at and assess and size up. And so Todd really helps walk you through a perspective of, man, I got to stop looking at what the average person around me does and think about it from my personal perspective.
That's so healthy. Anthony, every time we talk, I feel like I could talk to you for another hour because there's just so much that God has done in your life and is doing through you. And I'm so grateful for your time today and your generosity in sharing so much of the insight and wisdom that you have. Thank you for that.
Man, it's been a tremendous honor. And you are one of my favorite people on earth, William. I know we haven't spent a ton of time together, but I just love your spirit and your heart for service and the way you care about those, your audience and your clients is just, you mentioned excellence, brother. You represent it at the highest level. And for everybody out there, please encourage your peer group, your colleagues, listen in on this podcast, and follow William as much as possible. I wish there were more leaders like you in our world, brother. And I hope that your listeners would continue to follow you and encourage others around them to follow you as well.
Well, that is incredibly kind. I know people are going to want to stay connected to you and continue to learn more about what you're doing and how they can keep learning from you. What is the best way for them to do that, Anthony?
Sure thing. They can follow me on LinkedIn, just Anthony Flynn. If you find me on LinkedIn, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I give a lot of free content on LinkedIn that keeps people's engines going forward.
Nice.
So all the basic platforms, and of course, my website, amazingceo.com. By the way, that's not a statement that I'm amazing as much as I want to help other CEOs and key executives become amazing. So,
Nice.
amazingceo.com is our website.
Well, listeners, if you haven't picked up on it yet, Anthony's the real deal. Check him out, get connected, learn more about what he's doing, and figure out ways you can make that learning a regular part of your life. Anthony, thank you again for being here.
Thank you, brother, for having me.
Thanks for joining me for this episode today. As we wrap up, I'd love for you to do two things. First, subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss an episode. And if you find value here, I'd love it if you would rate it and review it. That really does make a difference in helping other people to discover this podcast. Second, if you don't have a copy of my newest book, Catalytic Leadership, I'd love to put a copy in your hands. If you go to catalyticleadershipbook.com, you can get a copy for free. Just pay the shipping so I can get it to you, and we'll get one right out. My goal is to put this into the hands of as many leaders as possible. This book captures principles that I've learned in 20 plus years of coaching leaders in the entrepreneurial space, in business, government, nonprofits, education, and the local church. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn to keep up with what I'm currently learning and thinking about. And if you're ready to take a next step with a coach to help you intentionally grow and thrive as a leader, I'd be honored to help you. Just go to catalyticleadership.net to book a call with me. Stay tuned for our next episode next week. Until then, as always, leaders, choose to be catalytic.
Thanks for listening to Catalytic Leadership with Dr. William Attaway. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss the next episode. Want more? Go to catalyticleadership.net.